The white medical ship moved slowly through the dark space between planets. Its name was HMS Sanctuary, and it looked different from other ships. Big red crosses painted on its sides told everyone that this was a hospital ship. The crosses were bright and easy to see from far away. Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge looking out at the stars. She had been flying medical ships for 15 years and still loved helping people who were hurt. Dr. Kevin Barnes walked up to the captain. He was the head doctor on the ship and had just finished checking all the medical rooms. The ship had beds for 300 patients and medicine for any kind of injury. Kevin was tired but happy. They had just helped some miners who got hurt in an accident on a space station. All the miners were going to be okay and were now safe back home with their families. Commander Alex Johnson came to the bridge too. He was in charge of keeping the ship safe, but hospital ships did not have weapons. Alex carried only a small gun and had 10 security people to help him. Hospital ships were protected by space law. No one was allowed to attack them. The law said that medical ships were safe everywhere in space, even during wars. The ship had 400 people working on it. Most were doctors and nurses. Some fixed the ship and some cooked food. Patricia Coleman was one of the best nurses on the ship. She could talk to many different kinds of aliens using the ship computers. The computers changed words from one language to another so everyone could understand each other. A loud sound came from the communications area. Lieutenant Danny Wright looked at his screens and called out to the captain. A distress signal was coming from somewhere close by. Someone needed help badly. Lisa walked over to see what was happening. The signal was weak but clear. A ship was damaged and had many hurt people inside. Danny worked on his computers to find out more about the signal. The ship sending it was called the Peaceful Dawn. It belonged to the Zephyrians, who looked like big insects but were very smart and kind. The Zephyrians had been fighting a war with the Krathri Empire for 2 years. The Krathri were mean and liked to hurt other species. Lisa looked at the star maps on the big screen. The damaged ship was in the neutral zone. This was an area of space where no one was supposed to fight. But the war between the Zephyrians and Krathri had made this area dangerous. Earth Command had told all human ships to stay away from there. Kevin spoke up first. He said they had to help the hurt people. It did not matter that it was dangerous. Patricia agreed with him. She said that helping others was what humans did best. Alex was worried about the danger, but he knew they had to go help. Lisa made her choice. She told Danny to send a message saying they would come to help. Then she told the ship pilots to change course toward the damaged ship. The Sanctuary turned and started moving faster toward the Zephyrian ship. It took 6 hours to reach the Peaceful Dawn. When they got close, they could see that the ship was badly hurt. Big holes were burned in its side and pieces of metal floated around it. The Zephyrian ship was dark and quiet. Only emergency lights were still working. Lisa called the damaged ship on the radio. A weak voice answered in the clicking language of the Zephyrians. The ship computer changed the words to English. The voice said there were 200 Zephyrians inside and most were hurt very badly. They had been attacked by 3 Krathri ships while trying to escape from their home planet. Kevin and Patricia got ready to help. They prepared the medical rooms and got all their tools ready. The ship had special rooms that could help any kind of alien. The air could be changed and the gravity could be made stronger or weaker. The beds could be made bigger or smaller depending on who needed help. Alex sent his security people to help move the hurt Zephyrians safely. Even though hospital ships had no weapons, Alex always kept his people ready. He did not trust the Krathri and worried they might come back. The rescue took 8 hours. The Zephyrians were carried carefully from their broken ship to the medical rooms of the Sanctuary. Many were hurt very badly. Some had burns from laser weapons. Others had broken bones from when their ship was hit. The young Zephyrians were scared and made sad clicking sounds. Patricia worked with the young ones while Kevin and the other doctors helped the adults. She learned some words in their language and tried to make them feel better. The ship computers helped her understand what they were saying. Many were asking about their families and wanted to know if everyone was safe. Dr. Barnes worked for 12 hours without stopping. The Zephyrian bodies were different from humans, but he had studied alien medicine for many years. He fixed broken bones and healed burns. The other doctors helped him, and soon all the hurt Zephyrians were getting better. The medical rooms were full of different sounds. Zephyrians clicked when they talked and made humming sounds when they were happy. Human voices mixed with alien voices as everyone worked together. The ship felt alive with the sounds of healing and hope. Captain Martinez walked through the medical areas and saw something beautiful. Humans and aliens were helping each other even though they looked very different. A human nurse held the hand of a scared young Zephyrian. A doctor worked carefully to fix the wing of an adult Zephyrian who had been hurt protecting his family. Lisa felt proud of her crew. This was why she loved being the captain of a hospital ship. They brought hope to dark places in space. They showed that not everyone in the galaxy wanted to fight and hurt others. Some people just wanted to help and heal. The sanctuary was now carrying 600 people instead of 400. Food had to be shared, and some crew members gave up their rooms so the Zephyrian families could stay together. No one complained. Everyone was happy to help, but something was wrong in space around them. Alex noticed it first. His sensors showed 3 ships moving toward them. The ships were big and dark and looked like weapons of war. They were Krathari ships, and they were coming fast toward the sanctuary. The 3 Krathari ships came out of hyperspace like dark shadows against the stars. Their hulls were black metal with sharp edges and covered in weapon ports. Each ship was twice as big as the sanctuary and built only for war. The lead ship was called the Deathbringer, and Admiral Vexstar stood on its bridge looking at the white hospital ship ahead. Admiral Vexstar was old even for a Krathari. His scaled skin was dark green and his 4 arms moved as he gave orders to his crew. He had fought in many wars and destroyed many enemy ships. The Krathari believed that showing mercy was weakness, and Vexstar had never shown mercy to anyone. Captain Zolthak stood next to the Admiral on the bridge. He was younger and sometimes wondered if the Krathari way of always fighting was right. But he had been trained to follow orders and never question his superiors. The other crew members on the bridge were all loyal Krathari warriors who enjoyed battle and destruction. On the sanctuary, Commander Alex Johnson saw the enemy ships on his screens and felt fear in his stomach. He called Captain Martinez right away. Lisa ran to the bridge and looked at the sensor readings. The 3 Krathari ships were moving toward them in attack formation. Their weapons were charging up and ready to fire. Lisa told Danny Wright to send a message to the Krathari ships. She wanted them to know that the sanctuary was a medical ship protected by space law. Danny sent the message on all frequencies. He told them about the hurt Zephyrians on board and that they were just trying to help wounded people. Admiral Vexstar received the message but did not care. He saw this as a perfect chance to send a message to all species in the galaxy. If they helped enemies of the Krathari Empire, they would be destroyed too. It did not matter if they were medical ships or cargo ships or anything else. The Admiral told his weapons officer to target the human ship. The weapons officer was confused because the ship was clearly marked as a hospital ship. He asked if the Admiral was sure about attacking a medical vessel. Vexstar became angry and shouted that he did not care what kind of ship it was. Any ship that helped Krathari enemies would be destroyed. Captain Zolthek felt uncomfortable about the order. He had studied space law and knew that attacking hospital ships was forbidden by every civilized species. But Admiral Vexstar was his superior, and questioning orders was punishable by death in the Krathari military. Zolthek stayed quiet and prepared for battle. On the sanctuary, Dr. Kevin Barnes was working in the main medical room when Alex Johnson's voice came over the speakers. Alex warned everyone that enemy ships were approaching and they should prepare for possible attack. Kevin looked around at all the hurt Zephyrians in the beds around him. They could not be moved, and many would die if they lost power or artificial gravity. Patricia Coleman was helping a young Zephyrian who had been badly burned. The child was scared and clicking in fear. Patricia held the small alien's hand and spoke in a calm voice. She promised that the humans would keep everyone safe. The child's big eyes looked up at her with trust. Lisa tried everything she could think of to avoid a fight. She sent more messages explaining that they were protected by space law. She offered to let Crathari officers come aboard to see that they only had wounded civilians. She even offered to give the Crathari some medical supplies if they needed them. Admiral Vexstar ignored all the messages. He ordered his ships to spread out and surround the hospital ship. The Deathbringer moved to the front while the other two ships went to the sides. They were now in perfect position to destroy the sanctuary with their combined firepower. The weapons officer on the Deathbringer reported that all weapons were ready to fire. The plasma cannons were charged and the targeting computers had locked onto the white hospital ship. Admiral Vexstar raised one of his 4 arms and prepared to give the order to fire. Captain Zalthuk made one last attempt to stop what was about to happen. He reminded the admiral that destroying a hospital ship would make every species in the galaxy angry with the Crathari. Other empires might join the war against them if they broke space law so badly. Vexstar turned his cold yellow eyes toward Zalthuk and spoke in a voice full of hate. He said that fear was more useful than friendship. When other species saw what happened to those who helped Crathari enemies, they would stay away from the war. Terror would protect the Crathari Empire better than any peace treaty. The admiral gave the order to fire. The weapons officer hesitated for just a moment, then pressed the firing controls. Bright beams of deadly plasma shot out from all 3 Crathari ships toward the defenseless hospital ship. The beams hit the sanctuary's hull and burned through the white metal like it was paper. The first explosions shook the entire ship. Lisa was thrown to the floor of the bridge as lights flickered and alarms started screaming. Emergency power kicked in, but whole sections of the ship lost air and gravity. The beautiful white hull that had saved so many lives was now broken and burning. In the medical rooms, Dr. Barnes held onto a bed as the ship shook around him. Wounded Zephyrians cried out in fear as medical equipment fell from the walls. Some of the hurt aliens were thrown from their beds and injured even worse. Barnes shouted for everyone to stay calm, but his own voice was full of fear. Patricia tried to protect the young Zephyrian she had been helping. She covered the small alien with her own body as another explosion rocked the ship. The child was clicking rapidly in terror, and Patricia whispered that everything would be okay, even though she knew it was not true. More plasma beams hit the sanctuary as the Crathari ships continued their attack. The hospital ship had no shields and no armor because medical ships were supposed to be safe. Each hit caused massive damage and killed more of the people inside. The ship that had brought hope to so many was now becoming their tomb. Commander Johnson tried to coordinate damage control, but there was too much destruction. The ship's engines were failing and life support was breaking down. He knew they had only minutes before the sanctuary would be completely destroyed. Alex made the hardest decision of his life and ordered everyone to abandon ship. Dr. Barnes refused to leave his patients. He continued working to save lives even as the ship died around him. Other doctors and nurses also stayed at their posts trying to help the wounded. They knew they would probably die, but they could not abandon the people who needed them. Lieutenant Danny Wright sent one last message to Earth before the communications system failed. He told Earth Command what had happened and asked them to remember the sanctuary and everyone who died trying to help others. His message would take 3 days to reach Earth, but Danny knew it was important that people know the truth. The final plasma strike hit the ship's reactor. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from planets far away. 3 days later, the message from Lieutenant Danny Wright reached Earth. The signal traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying the terrible news about the sanctuary. Earth Command received the message at exactly 14:32 Earth Standard Time on a Tuesday afternoon that would be remembered forever. Fleet Admiral Susan Clark was in her office reviewing supply reports when her assistant brought her the emergency message. Susan had been in the Earth military for 30 years and had seen many terrible things during the Outer Colony Wars, but nothing had prepared her for what she read in Danny Wright's final transmission. Susan read the message 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. A Crathari fleet had deliberately attacked and destroyed a clearly marked hospital ship. 400 human medical personnel were dead along with 200 wounded, Zephyrian civilians who had been under human protection. The attack violated every law of war ever written. General Peter Hayes arrived at Earth Command 20 minutes after the message was received. Peter was in charge of all Earth's ground forces and had been Susan's friend for 15 years. He was a big man with gray hair who usually stayed calm during emergencies. But when Susan showed him the message, his face turned red with anger. Peter slammed his large fist on Susan's desk so hard that her coffee cup jumped. He said that attacking a hospital ship was the most cowardly thing any military force could do. The Crathri had not just killed humans, they had destroyed everything that humanity stood for. They had attacked healers and protectors of the innocent within. Our President Catherine Moore was called to an emergency meeting. Catherine had been Earth's leader for 6 years and had always tried to solve problems with words instead of weapons. She believed that humans should be an example of peace and cooperation for other species in the galaxy. The President arrived at Earth Command in her official transport along with the heads of all the major departments. Foreign Minister Robert King came to discuss what other alien governments might think. Defense Secretary Linda White brought files about Earth's military strength. Economic Advisor Paul Green had numbers about what a war might cost. Susan Clark played the recorded message from the sanctuary for everyone in the room. They heard Danny Wright's young voice describing the attack as explosions and screams filled the background. They heard Dr. Barnes shouting orders to save patients even as the ship was being destroyed. They heard the final moments before the transmission ended in static. The room was completely quiet for a long time after the message ended. President Moore sat with her hands folded looking at the table. She had 3 children of her own, and thinking about all those young doctors and nurses dying made her feel sick. These were people who had dedicated their lives to helping others. Foreign Minister King spoke first. He said that attacking the sanctuary would make every species in the galaxy angry with the Crathri. This could be used to build a coalition against the Crathri Empire. Many species would support Earth if humans asked for help to punish this crime. Defense Secretary White had different ideas. She said that Earth should respond with overwhelming force to make sure this never happened. Again, the Crathri only respected strength and would see any diplomatic response as weakness. They would attack more hospital ships if Earth did not show them the consequences. President Moore asked Admiral Clark about Earth's military capabilities. Susan opened her files and began reading numbers that surprised everyone in the room. Earth had been building ships and training soldiers for 50 years since the Outer Colony Wars ended. The military was much larger and stronger than most people realized. The Earth Defense Force had 8,000 warships of different sizes spread across human space. Most were patrol ships and escorts, but there were also 12 super dreadnoughts that could destroy entire enemy fleets. Earth also had 200,000 support ships that could be converted for military use in a few days. General Hayes added information about ground forces. Earth had 15 million trained soldiers and Marines ready for deployment. There were also 50 million reserves who could be called up if needed. Earth's industrial capacity could produce weapons and supplies faster than any other single species in the galaxy. President Moore asked about the Darkest Hour Protocol. This was a secret plan that had been created after the Outer Colony Wars, but never used. Admiral Clark explained that the protocol would recall every Earth military ship to home space and mobilize the entire human war machine. It was designed for threats to Earth's survival. The discussion continued for 6 hours, as they talked about every possible response to the attack. Some wanted to try diplomacy first, while others demanded immediate military action. But everyone agreed that the Crathri attack could not go unpunished. Too many good people had died for Earth to do nothing. Finally, President Moore made her decision. She said that the attack on the sanctuary was not just murder, but an attack on human values. The Crathri had shown that they considered human compassion to be weakness. They needed to learn that they were wrong about humans. The President authorized the Darkest Hour Protocol for the first time in Earth's history. Every human military ship would return to Earth immediately. The entire merchant fleet would be mobilized to support military operations. Earth was going to war, and this time there would be no mercy for those who attacked the innocent. Admiral Clark sent the recall order to every human ship in space within minutes of the President's decision. The message was simple and used codes that every Earth ship captain knew. Return to Earth immediately for Protocol Darkest Hour. No exceptions and no delays. Captain Ryan Miller received the message while his battleship, UES Vengeance, was patrolling near the Centauri system. Ryan had never seen a Darkest Hour order before, but he knew what it meant. He immediately ordered his ship to turn toward Earth at maximum speed. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than anything since the Colony Wars. Commander Helen Foster got the same message while her destroyer squadron was conducting joint exercises with Vorthan ships near Volf 359. Helen apologized to the alien commanders and pulled her ships out of the exercise without explanation. The Vorthan officers were confused but did not try to stop the human ships from leaving, all across human space. The same scene was repeated. Earth ships abandoned their missions and turned toward home. Merchant captains received orders to report to military bases for conversion to support ships. Civilian shipyards began working around the clock to prepare for something that no alien species had ever seen. The alien ambassadors on Earth noticed the sudden activity, but Earth's government would not explain what was happening. Ambassador Calinari of the Vorthan Confederacy sent worried messages to his home government. He reported that humans had gone completely silent about their military movements. The Zephyrian ambassador tried to thank Earth for the sacrifice of the Sanctuary's crew, but human officials would not meet with him. Earth's usual openness and willingness to talk had been replaced by cold silence. Something fundamental had changed in humanity, and the aliens could feel it, even if they did not understand it. As ships began arriving in Earth space, the alien observers were shocked by what they saw. They had known that Earth had a military, but they had not realized how large and powerful it really was. The peaceful traders and healers they thought they knew were revealing themselves to be something much more dangerous. Earth's war machine was waking up, and the galaxy would never be the same. Beyond the moon Luna, in the darkness of space, the largest military gathering in galactic history began to take shape. Ships arrived every hour from all corners of human territory, answering the Darkest Hour recall. What started as empty space soon filled with thousands of vessels, creating a metal constellation that stretched across millions of kilometers. Admiral Susan Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the fleet grow before her eyes. The Retribution was Earth's newest super dreadnought, measuring 3 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could crack planets. 12 ships like her formed the core of the Armada, each one representing the peak of human military engineering. Captain Jake Turner arrived with Carrier Group 7, bringing 6 massive carriers and their escort fleets. Each carrier held 300 fighter craft and bomber ships crewed by Earth's best pilots. The carriers themselves were floating cities with crews of 50,000 people each. Jake had commanded carriers for 10 years but had never seen so many ships in one place. Commodore Amy Richardson brought her fast attack squadron racing in from the outer colonies. Her ships were built for speed and hitting enemy vessels before they could react. Amy was known throughout the fleet as someone who never backed down from a fight. Her crews were volunteers who had specifically requested assignment to the most dangerous missions. The numbers grew every day as more ships answered the recall. 8,000 military vessels of every type and size formed into organized battle groups. Dreadnoughts and battleships formed the heavy assault forces. Cruisers and destroyers created screening elements. Fast corvettes and patrol boats would hunt enemy scouts and supply ships, but the warships were only part of the massive gathering. 200,000 civilian vessels had been called to support the military operation. Cargo ships became supply vessels carrying ammunition and food. Passenger liners transformed into troop transports. Even mining ships joined the fleet, bringing industrial equipment and repair facilities. The logistics of feeding and supplying 15 million people in space was staggering. Lieutenant Commander Tracy Adams worked 18 hours a day coordinating supply chains that stretched back to Earth and all the human colonies. Every day, the fleet consumed enough food to feed a small planet and enough fuel to power a star system. Dr. Michelle Grant arrived from the Xenobiology Institute on Mars, bringing critical intelligence about Krathri biology and military tactics. Michelle had studied alien species for 20 years and knew more about Krathri physiology than almost any human. Her knowledge would be essential for planning attacks that would be most effective against Krathri ships and soldiers. Colonel Brandon Lee commanded the Marine Expeditionary Force that would handle any boarding actions or ground combat. Brandon's Marines were the toughest fighters in human space, trained for combat in every environment from zero gravity to hostile alien worlds. They carried weapons designed specifically for fighting different alien species. The alien diplomatic community on Earth watched the massive military buildup with growing alarm. Ambassador Kellinary sent daily reports to the Vorthan Confederacy, describing the incredible scale of human military preparation. He had served on Earth for 5 years and thought he understood human capabilities, but this display shocked him completely. The Rigelian trade representative tried to get information about where the fleet was going and when it would leave. Human officials refused to answer any questions about military operations. The same humans who had always been open and friendly now treated alien diplomats with polite but cold formality. Even species that were friendly with humans began to worry. The Altarian ambassador requested a meeting with President Moore to discuss the situation. The Altarians had been Earth's first alien allies and had fought alongside humans during the Outer Colony Wars, but President Moore declined the meeting, saying that Earth was handling an internal matter. On the Retribution, Admiral Clark held daily briefings with her senior commanders. Captain Turner reported that his pilots were ready for any mission. Commodore Richardson confirmed that her fast attack ships could strike anywhere in Krathri space within days. Colonel Lee assured everyone that his Marines could take any Krathri. INSTLA Dr. Grant provided detailed analysis of Krathri military doctrine and ship designs. She explained that the Krathri relied on heavy armor and powerful weapons, but their ships were slower than human vessels. Krathri crews were trained to follow orders without question, which made them predictable in battle, but also very disciplined. The Krathri Empire controlled 47 star systems and had a military force of about 3,000 ships. Their technology was roughly equal to human technology, but they had fewer ships and less industrial capacity. What made them dangerous was their willingness to use brutal tactics that other species considered dishonorable. Admiral Clark studied the intelligence reports and began forming her battle plan. The Krathri had made a critical error by attacking a hospital ship. They had united humanity in a way that nothing else could have done. Every human in the fleet was personally motivated to avenge the Sanctuary and her crew. The tactical planning sessions continued around the clock as staff officers worked out every detail of the coming campaign. Supply routes were planned to support operations deep in enemy territory. Communication networks were established to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously. Medical facilities were prepared to handle casualties from the largest military operation in human history. Fleet chaplains from different Earth religions held services for the crews preparing for battle. Many of the personnel had never been in actual combat before and were nervous about what was coming. The chaplains reminded everyone that they were fighting for justice and to protect innocent people from future attacks. In the vast hangar bays of the carriers, pilots performed final checks on their fighters. These small ships were fast and deadly, carrying plasma cannons and antimatter missiles. The pilots were young men and women who had trained their entire adult lives for space combat. They painted the names of Sanctuary crew members on their ships to honor the fallen. Engineering crews worked continuously to keep all the ships in perfect condition. The fleet would be operating far from Earth's shipyards and repair facilities, so every vessel had to be ready for extended combat operations. Spare parts and repair equipment filled the cargo holds of hundreds of support ships. Intelligence officers intercepted Krathri communications and reported that the enemy was beginning to realize something was happening. Krathari border patrols had detected long-range sensor sweeps from human scout ships. The Krathari military was going to higher alert status, but they still did not understand the scale of what was coming. After 2 weeks of preparation, Admiral Clark announced that the fleet was ready for deployment. The largest military force ever assembled by a single species would soon depart for Krathari space. The alien observers could only watch in amazement as humanity prepared to demonstrate what happened when a peaceful species was pushed too far. President Moore sent a final message to the fleet before departure. She told them that they carried with them the hopes of every human who believed in justice and protection of the innocent. The crews of the sanctuary had died trying to help others, and their sacrifice would not be forgotten. The Armada began to move toward the hyperspace jump points that would carry them to enemy territory. Thousands of ships disappeared one by one into the swirling portals that connected distant stars. Soon the space around Earth was empty again, but everyone knew that when those ships reappeared, the galaxy would be forever changed. The human armada emerged from hyperspace across 17 Krathari star systems simultaneously, like a storm front covering half the galaxy. In each system, hundreds of human warships appeared at the same moment, creating a coordinated attack that no military force in galactic history had ever attempted. The careful planning and precise timing showed the true power of human organization and determination. Admiral Vexstar was on the bridge of his flagship Deathbringer when the first reports reached him. His communications officer was receiving frantic messages from Krathari bases across the Empire. Human ships were appearing everywhere at once in numbers that seemed impossible. The officer's voice shook as he tried to make sense of the reports. At first, Vexstar thought the reports were mistakes or enemy propaganda. No single species had enough ships to attack 17 systems at the same time. But as more messages arrived, the terrible truth became clear. The humans had sent their entire military force against the Krathari Empire, and it was larger than anyone had imagined. The Krathari home system contained their most powerful defenses, including orbital battle stations that had never been defeated. Admiral Zalthuk commanded the home fleet with 300 of the Empire's best ships. When the human fleet appeared, his sensors could not count all the enemy vessels because there were too many of them. Admiral Clark stood on the bridge of the Retribution as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace above the Krathari homeworld. She counted over 500 enemy ships and dozens of orbital fortresses that bristled with weapons. The Krathari had built impressive defenses, but they were designed to fight normal fleets, not the overwhelming force that humanity had brought. Captain Jake Turner launched his fighters immediately as the battle began. 3,000 human fighter craft swarmed toward the Krathari defenses like angry insects. The small ships were too fast and numerous for the heavy Krathari weapons to track effectively. Turner's pilots had trained for this moment their entire careers, and they flew with deadly precision. The first exchange of fire lit up space with beams of energy and explosions of antimatter. Krathari plasma cannons fired at maximum power, while human ships responded with weapons that had been banned by galactic convention. The humans were no longer following the rules of civilized warfare because their enemies had broken those rules first. Commodore Amy Richardson's fast attack ships struck at Krathari supply depots and communication centers behind the main battle line. Her ships moved so quickly that Krathari commanders could not coordinate their defenses. Each attack hit exactly where it would cause the most damage to enemy operations. On the death bringer, Admiral Vexstar realized that his forces were being systematically destroyed. The humans were not just attacking randomly, but were executing a careful plan to eliminate Krathari military power completely. Every human ship seemed to know exactly what it was supposed to do and when to do it. The orbital battle stations that protected the Krathari homeworld had been considered impregnable. Their shields could stop any known weapon, and their armor was thick enough to survive direct hits from battleship cannons. But the human super dreadnoughts carried weapons that the Krathari had never seen before. The UES Retribution fired its main guns at the largest orbital fortress. The energy beams cut through the station's shields like they were not there and melted holes completely through its armor. Secondary explosions tore the massive structure apart from the inside as its own ammunition magazines exploded. Dr. Michelle Grant's intelligence about Krathuri biology proved valuable as human Marines boarded damaged enemy ships. Colonel Brandon Lee's forces knew exactly where to find the Krathuri command centers and how to disable their life support systems. The boarding actions were swift and decisive. Captain Zolthuk tried to organize a counterattack with his remaining ships, but the humans anticipated every move. Human commanders seemed to understand Krathuri tactics better than the Krathuri understood them themselves. Every attempt to rally the defense was met by precisely targeted human strikes. Admiral Clark opened communications channels to broadcast a message across all Krathuri frequencies. Her voice was calm and cold as she spoke to the entire enemy empire. She told them that this was the price for attacking those who only wanted to help the wounded and innocent. The message continued with a promise that would echo through galactic history. Any species that attacked medical ships or humanitarian vessels would face the complete destruction of their military forces. Earth would protect those who could not protect themselves, and would show no mercy to those who preyed on the defenseless. In less than 12 hours, the Krathuri home fleet was completely destroyed. The orbital fortresses were reduced to floating debris and the planet's defenses were eliminated. Admiral Zolthuk's flagship was disabled and boarded by human Marines, who took him prisoner for war crimes trials. Similar scenes played out across the Krathuri Empire as human fleets systematically eliminated enemy military assets. Krathuri colonies surrendered rather than face bombardment when they saw what had happened to defended systems. The empire that had terrorized its neighbors for decades was being dismantled. Piece by piece, Admiral Vextar made his last stand at the fortress world of Krathos Prime with the remnants of his fleet. He still commanded 200 ships and thought he could make the humans pay a heavy price for their victory. But when the human fleet arrived, it was clear that resistance was hopeless. The Death Bringer was among the last ships destroyed in the final battle. Vextar refused surrender and fought until his flagship was a burning wreck drifting in space. He died knowing that his decision to attack the sanctuary had brought about the complete destruction of everything he had served. Within 6 months, the Krathuri Empire ceased to exist as a military power. Their surviving fleets were scattered across distant systems and their colonies had declared independence. The Krathuri homeworld was under permanent human monitoring to ensure they could never again threaten peaceful ships. The psychological impact of the human campaign was felt throughout the galaxy. Other aggressive species reconsidered their expansionist plans when they saw what had happened to the Krathuri. The humans had demonstrated that their peaceful nature was a choice, not a weakness. Medical ships and refugee vessels now traveled under the protection of human warships stationed throughout known space. Any attack on humanitarian vessels would bring swift and overwhelming retaliation from Earth's military forces. The message was clear and every species understood it perfectly. The galaxy settled into an uneasy peace as aggressive empires reconsidered their policies. Trade routes became safer and conflicts decreased as species realized that human protection extended to all innocent beings regardless of their origin. The stars themselves seemed dimmer, now shadowed by the dark hulls of human warships patrolling every sector. Humanity returned to its role as healers and helpers, but the galaxy would never again mistake human compassion for weakness. The memory of the sanctuary's destruction and the terrible vengeance that followed ensured that no species would dare attack those under human protection. In the years that followed, children across hundreds of worlds would learn the story of the hospital ship that unleashed Earth's wrath. They would understand that the gentle giants of Earth were only gentle by choice and that choice could be revoked. The lesson was written in the destroyed fleets of the Krathuri Empire. The stars remembered the day they went dark and the galaxy trembled at the thought of ever seeing it happen again. Peace had returned to space, but it was a peace built on the understanding that some lines must never be crossed. The humans had drawn those lines in fire and fury that would burn in galactic memory forever.